Hey guys, so this is something I decided to do recently, and that's going over different anime shows that I like and talking about my favorite villain in each series. I've spoken about some of these like before, like in some of my anime reviews that I've done, but I've also just wanted to talk about these villains like properly and talk about how some of these are really incredible characters and just fantastic antagonists in their series. And so I just really wanted to just get my thoughts out on some of these because some of these I haven't gotten into yet and I really want to, and I'm hoping I'll eventually get into making anime reviews for some of these shows, but for now, I really want to talk about just some of my favorite villains and some of my favorite different franchises, and so yeah, and also this won't be a ranking on which one of these villains is my favorite anime villain of all time. I just want to talk about different franchises and my favorite villain in each of them. And so let's begin, and I hope you all like this. So starting us off with Naruto, I'm actually going with Naruto. Like, wow. Yeah, I should have mentioned this in my Naruto Shippuden review, but yeah, I do think that Naruto is probably my favorite villain in the whole franchise. Being, for me, one of, if not the most sympathetic anime villain ever, in my opinion. Naruto's actions in regard to why he chose to do what he did are entirely understandable, and you can't help but feel sorry for him, especially when he's explaining his backstory and telling Naruto his motivation. He may have caused so much death, sadness, and destruction, but his past does still explain his choices. Some villains like Madara might be more popular and more well regarded, but I'll always stand by that Naruto is my favorite villain in the whole Naruto franchise. Now for Full Metal Alchemist, I'm actually gonna go with Father. This was actually a bit of a tough one when I went back and sort of thought on it because while I may have said that Father was my favorite villain in all of Full Metal Alchemist in my review for the series, when thinking about some of the other villains, especially someone like Wrath. It was a little trickier than I remember, but then I decided that Father really was my favorite. While someone like Wrath was definitely a fantastic villain in the series, with having some of the best action scenes in the show, Father is another level of entertainment. Being the orchestrator of everything that has occurred in the series even before it began, and Father was originally the dwarf and the black who desired nothing more than becoming the perfect being. This led him to manipulating Hohenheim to giving him a body and sacrificing a kingdom to gain immortality and creating the homunculi and tricking the entire military so they would be his pawns and killing so many innocent people just to make his dream a reality. And even at the end, even after he was defeated, he was still really cool even regardless. So now we're moving on to Dragon Ball, and for this I'm actually going to go with Frieza. Dragon Ball has some of the most famous villains in anime history, and yet none of them have ever lived up to its greatest ever, the base tyrant himself, Frieza. While little to nothing has been revealed about his past, aside from one or two mentions scenes here and there. Frieza's charm and charisma is what made him constantly entertaining, with mocking everyone around him and thinking every being in existence should be beneath him. Frieza made it a point to make sure whoever he killed is as terrified as possible, and he loves nothing more than annihilating life. Whether it's one or two people he might come across or a literal entire planet, Frieza has no standard for who he'll choose to kill. While he may have had to play something of a hero role during the tournament of power, there's no denying his role was completely self-serving, and whenever he appears again, I'll really be looking forward to it, especially after the events of Dragon Ball Super Broly. Moving on to One Piece, I'm actually gonna go with Blackbeard. Ishiro's Oda, he created some of the greatest anime villains of all time in his masterpiece manga series, but probably my favorite out of all of them is the potential final villain of the whole series, Marshall G.T., aka Blackbeard. This was kind of a tough one for me because I have a lot of favorite villains from this series, like Hisham, Crocodile, Akainu, and so on, but Hisham made the cut for me. Being built up as the likely final obstacle for Luffy to overcome for the series, he's one of the most charismatic villains in the series. Formerly a member of a Whitebeard pirate, he used his position to hopefully get the dark through, which he eventually did, and he betrayed his captain and crew to become a captain himself. This led him to fighting Ace and handing him over to the Marines, invading Impel Down, and recruit his new member to his crew, killing Whitebeard and somehow absorbing Whitebeard's tremor through power. And while he may not show up that much nowadays, there's no denying he'll play a large part towards the end. And given how his show is the same as Luffy's and so many others, to find One Piece and become the Pirate King, he's gonna be one of the strongest opponents when Luffy faces him, and it's gonna be really cool to see how Luffy will take him down. Now going on to Yu Hakusho. The first Yoshihiro Todashi's villains on here, I'm actually going with Todoro. Sure, like I said in my review of Yu Hakusho, someone like Sensui might be more sympathetic, but in terms of the villain of the series that I think is the most entertaining, I'm going with the younger of the Todoro brothers. Being obsessed with ranks and wanting to keep his youth, Todoro threw away his humanity to become a stronger warrior. This led him in forcing Yusuke and the others into participation into the Dark Tournament, killing Genkai and transforming into a monster with humongous muscles that it took Yusuke suffering a deep sorrow just to be able to harm Todoro, and then using all his powers and his spirit gun to finally kill him. And even at the end, Todoro was still an entertaining villain, but trying to convince Yusuke that strength was all he needed and he could throw everyone and everything away just to acquire it. Now going from Yu Hakusho to Hunter x Hunter, another amazing Yoshihiro Togashi villain. I'm actually going with Meruem here, and in my opinion, Meruem is not only Yoshihiro Togashi's best villain, but also his most sympathetic. After his mother gave birth to him to be the king of the Chimera Ant, he set out to devour humans, and he did until he met a girl named against Homoji, and he eventually began to change and learn the value of life. And despite doing so many terrible things and killing so many innocent people, Marilyn grew into becoming one of the most tragic anime villains I've ever seen, with his relationship with Homoji being especially heartbreaking. And by the end of the Chimera Antar, you can help but feel sorry for him when he dies. Now, when it comes to the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise, I'm actually gonna count like the entire, like all the villains of Yu-Gi-Oh on here, not just from just the original series. I'm gonna pick one from the entire franchise, and for Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm actually gonna go with Yu-Bell from Yu-Gi-Oh GX, and yeah, I really want to be able to talk more about this when I hopefully make my review for Yu-Gi-Oh! And for Yu-Gi-Oh! GX and 5G, but I will say that I absolutely love Yu-Bell as a villain. She's such a really awesome villain, and everything she does in season 3 of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX is really cool. Like just everything she does, and her design is really cool, and I love Hasanada's Lee Morris's performance as her as well. She does a really great job, and she does and along with that great design, along with everything she does in the season, she does do a great job of being a really cool and kind of sadistic villain as well, with teleporter in all of Duo Academy, who went to the other dimension, taking over Marcel's body and using Viper as a pawn in her plan as well, and also tricking Jaden into becoming the Supreme King, and then finally trying to destroy all the 12 dimensions so that the two of them could be together. And again, I'm really hoping that I'll eventually be able to make a review for Yu-Gi-Oh! GX just so I can talk more in depth about her, just because I love Yu-Bell as a villain just so much. Now moving on to My Hero Academia, I'm actually going to go with All for One. Given how My Hero Academia is all about fighting villains, there's tons of bad guys to choose from in the series, but I decided to go with the main one for this. While someone like Shigaraki might be shown more, All for One is really the big mastermind behind everything, being a character with multiple quirks. He's accomplished so much, like almost killing all my former League of villains, turning Shigaraki into a villain, having Tashan kidnapped, and being partly responsible for destroying most of the city when she and All Might had their final fight. I'm really excited to see more of him, and I think it would be really cool to see if he somehow is the final villain. Especially if Yetu had to be the one to fight him at some point. Moving on to One Punch Man now, I'm actually gonna go with Boros. One Punch Man is kind of a weird one because not many of the villains really stand out, given how Saitama will usually end up smashing them with nothingness within seconds. But the one that I think is a particular standout is the final villain of the first season, Boros. Well, he's sort of like Frieza with being a galactic space tyrant looking for an opponent worthy of facing him. And for a long time he searched for one, believing a prophecy he had once heard about someone, and he had believed that there was someone out there worth fighting for his full potential, and this eventually leads him to Earth, where he and Saitama proceed to smash everything around them. And while Saitama really was just holding back, the fight between them was mind-boggling, and with the two of them just moving so fast that they destroyed everything around them. It's just nuts that it led to one of the most insane final battles in an anime I've ever seen. Now I'm getting into one that I haven't ever really mentioned before, but I want to talk about Bleach on here. And for my favorite villain of Bleach, I'm actually gonna go with Aizen. Being by far one of the most popular anime villains ever, so Aizen is one of the coolest anime villains you'll ever see. While we know basically nothing about his past, that doesn't get in the way of showing just how awesome of a villain he is. For the longest time, he was pretending to be like any other Soul Reaper captain until he betrayed all of them and just so he could show just how superior he was to them. This involved him killing so many of his fellow Soul Reapers, tormenting them and doing everything he could just to show off just how powerful he is and how inferior he thought they all were to him. And Aizen is also just one of the most cunning and smartest villains in anime. He's just so fun to watch. Now moving on to the 7 deadly sins, I'm actually going to put Zeldris on here. While most of the other 10 commandments do stand out in their rank, Zeldris is, in my opinion, the one who stands out the most. Being one of the biggest villains in the series, Zeldris was imprisoned like the other commandments for a long time until they were eventually released and began to use their power to try to destroy the kingdom. He's done everything he could to show how strong he is compared to his fellow commandments, and even assisted Meliodas when he turned evil and was determined to become the Demon King. So yeah, while we haven't seen the entire series just yet, it is really cool just to think what will eventually happen to him at the very end. This is another anime that I've never mentioned, that I haven't really spoken that much about before, but I really, really want to. And so for Berserk, I'm actually going with Griffith, aka Femto. This is a pretty big spoiler for the Berserk series, but I think Femto is a really cool villain. While he may have previously been a human named Griffith, that time has passed ever since his betrayal. At Griffith, he was the leader of the mercenary, the Band of the Hawk, and became involved in the 100-year war and was close to accomplishing his dream of having his own kingdom until he was eventually imprisoned and tortured to the point of never recovering. However, after this, he summoned the God Hand, sacrificed most of his comrades to be eaten by demons so he could become one himself, and proceeded to torture us in some seriously messed up ways. While it may be unknown whether we'll see more of Berserk in the future, and while it's kind of unknown exactly what his plan is now, I would definitely be excited to see more of him in the manga. Again, assuming we ever get more after Muri's tragic passing. So this is actually one that I actually recently got into. I only recently just got into Attack on Titan. Like, yeah, you can see here I'm wearing the shirt now because I started it about 3 weeks ago when I first got the first season, and I have all 3 currently released seasons, and I actually finished watching the third season yesterday. And so for the Attack on Titan series, I'm actually going with Reina and Berthold for my favorite villains of the series, aka the Colossal and Armored Titan. So yeah, while Reiner and Berthold were some of the most likable characters in season 1, with them being being key members of the survey, or they were eventually found out to have been the Colossal and Armored Titan, and then they betrayed all their friends by being the one to destroy the wall, allowing other Titans to invade their town and kill so many other people. And now, after season 3, Berthold is after being killed by Armin, and now only Reina is left. And so I'm really excited to see whether or not he actually dies now in season 4. Now moving on to another one of the shows that I talked about recently, and I talked about Death Note. And for Death Note, I'm actually going with Light himself. Like I said in my anime review for Death Note, I find it really interesting with the main character of the series is actually like the main villain. That's a really interesting turn for a show like this. And for Death Note, it's really cool the fact, and yeah, like himself is a really cool villain. After finding the Death Note, he becomes corrupt by power and decides to become the god of the new world, and he becomes absolutely crazy because of it. And so yeah, it's really cool to see sort of that descent into madness that he has, and it's cool, and yeah, and the fact that he's also incredibly intelligent is another really good cool thing to see. And like I said, it's especially for a Shonen Jump property like this, and the fact that it has a main character who is like this terrible a person and this evilly so cool to see. And yeah, despite doing so many terrible things, it's really cool to see the different things that he does. And by the end, it kind of sort of bittersweet when he eventually dies. I mean, yeah, it's definitely incredibly satisfying, but it's also somewhat kind of mellow, I suppose, because it kind of weird that we followed him for all the time until he eventually died. So yeah, kind of a bittersweet ending when you really think about it, in my opinion. Now moving on to Cowboy Bebop, I'm actually going to go with this series. Like I said in my review for the series, we actually don't see that much of this in the series when he is eventually introduced. But up until then, we don't really see him that much afterwards. However, throughout the entire time he is seen, he is a pretty cool villain, with being a swordsman and being like the new leader of the Red Dragon Syndicate, and just doing all these terrible things to try to torment Spike. And by the end, it is pretty cool when she and Spike eventually have their final fight, and it's cool when the two of them exchange blows the way they do, and eventually by the end when they do kill each other, it's kind of cool, but it's also pretty cool. And I think just the fact that we don't really see this just that much in this series does kind of help make them even cooler, in my opinion. Now moving on to Trigun. This is actually a really interesting one because I've never even mentioned this like I haven't with Attack on Titan yet before, but I do really enjoy it. Trigun. I watched the entire show in October last year, and I really enjoyed it, despite it being very tragic. And throughout the entire series, so for the entire series, I'm actually gonna go with like the main villain of the series, Knives. Again, we don't really see, it's like with Vicious, we don't see Knives that much throughout the series, but while he's on screen, he is a pretty cool villain with doing a lot of really terrible things as well, like how he caused all the people on the ship to be killed when he and Vash were still young, and then eventually by the end when he was causing Vash so much pain with having so many people try to kill him, but then by the end when he and Vash have their final fight, it is a really cool fight with just both of them using all their guns on each other, and then by the end it is kind of satisfying when Vash is finally able to kill him. And so finally with Fairy Tail, I'm actually gonna go with Acnologia. And so finishing this all off is the final villain of Fairy Tail, Acnologia. I know I kinda had a bit of a sin with this one because because originally Spout was my favorite villain of the series a while back, but I changed my mind a lot since then, and ever since then I decided that Acnologia himself is my favorite. While someone like Jareth may have been built up more as the final villain, Acnologia was the one who was the villain that everyone was having to team up against at the very end. Being both a human and dragon, Acnologia is one of the all-time strongest characters in the franchise. He's also the one responsible for killing Igneo and destroying so much of at the end during the final battle against so many other wizards, and it even took all of them teaming up to destroy him, and as well as all the Dragon Slayers teaming up, that's already why Acnologia is my favorite Fairy Tail villain. So yeah, guys, those are my favorite villains from different anime franchises I've seen. I really want to talk about this and just not only talk about some anime franchises I haven't spoken about yet, but also just talk about some of my favorite villains from them, especially just because I just love villains so much, and anime villains are some of the most entertaining ever in my opinion. So yeah, I really wanted to talk about this and get my thoughts out on them, and I especially wanted to just show you different franchises that I'll hopefully be doing reviews for really soon. And so yeah, those are my picks for my favorite villains in different anime franchises. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all liked this video. If you did, please like this video. Please comment down below to tell me what you think, and please tell me who some of your favorite anime villains are from these franchises if you want down below. And please follow me on Twitter at Maloney at Maloney, and Disney fan writer Kingdom Hearts and Disney Please every day, and please subscribe for more content like this coming soon, and I'll see you all next time. Take care.